So we're here today talking about simple generosity and thinking about Wesley's admonition to earn all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. And today I'm really thrilled that I've got two very special people who are going to talk to us about this idea of earn all you can. This is Chris and Laura Hines. They are members of our church. Chris, Laura, it's great to see you today.
Great to see you. Thanks for having us.
You bet. Tell us quickly a little bit about yourselves. Where are you from? When you started coming to Grace Avenue?
I'm from Dallas, and we've been living in Frisco now for the past 7.5 years. And we started coming to Grace Avenue probably about 6 years ago. Just kind of visited. A friend of ours told us about the church, and so we wanted to come check it out. And I'd say maybe the last 1.5 to 2 years we've been coming more regularly, and every Sunday. So
great. So y'all are regular attenders of the 11 o'clock worship service?
Correct.
In the sanctuary?
Yep.
Great.
We get to listen to you every week.
And that can be a blessing and a curse as well, so I get all that as well. So we're talking today about Wesley's idea of earn all you can. So I wonder if you just start off and think with me a little bit about, tell me about what your basic attitude is about money and the use of money.
Okay. So I currently am do a couple different things. My main purpose of acquiring income is I do ticket sales, so concert and sports tickets. With that comes a lot of weird hours and all that fun stuff and managing a balance and all that. But basically, when we first had kids, I was running my own business, had a couple employees, and everything was great, and then kids came along, and it's like, okay, now we're kind of thrown for a loop here. How are we going to manage all this? And so Laura was gracious enough to volunteer to stay at home and raise the kids so I would be able to work and focus more on getting income. And my main purpose of work hard now so I don't have to later is my main focus on, so with Laura being able to take care of the kids during the day and school and all that, it allows me to dive in more to acquire that income and save it up.
So both of you worked before you had children?
yes.
Laura, what did you do before you had children?
I'm a speech pathologist, so I worked for a school district for about 13 years, and then I did some home health before I got pregnant with Lucas. So I've worked since, all through high school. I worked with babysitting and stuff because I was involved in so many other activities. But then after that, I worked all through college and sometimes about 3 or 4 jobs at a time just to make sure that I would have, what I needed to get through school and make ends meet.
Right. And so you guys have had to make some transitions and changes, as you mentioned, as you went along. So, Chris, one of the things that you're involved in now is a pretty entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about how you got started with that and what you feel like some of the risks are and some of the challenges are with that.
Okay, great. Well, I've always been an entrepreneur ever since I was little. One of my first jobs was picking fruit out of my parents' backyard and going door to door, or I would do, the little spin art, wheel it around on my wagon. I would make bookmarks. So I've always been in buying and selling stuff, and that just kind of carried over into high school. I did selling video games on eBay, and then after high school, I went into the military and kind of found tickets there. I was first newly into the Air Force, and the military doesn't make a whole lot of money, so had to try to supplement my income so I could have some extra spending money on the weekends. And so I found tickets, and I'd make an extra $20 here or there, and that was enough to let me go eat at the restaurants with my buddies on the weekend. And then moved overseas for a few years to the Marshall Islands, and tickets kind of got put on hold because I was living on a tiny island on Kwajalein, and the internet connection isn't the greatest over there. And so that's where I met Laura. Then I moved back here because she wasn't going to leave Dallas, so I decided I was going to be a resident of Dallas. And that was right about the 08-09 crash with the market and everything. And what I had been trained to do in the military was all, contract work with the government, and I couldn't get hired. So I kind of fell back onto tickets and took a credit card, maxed it out, and said I'm either going to make this work or I'm going to be, $20,000 bankrupt. So the risk is huge. I never know what my next paycheck's going to be. I never know how much, credit card debt the business is carrying, and now I'm responsible for other people's families and incomes being, a business owner and an employer. So, but I also think that makes me work harder, and I'm able to pour my passion into work. And with that, like you said, comes great risk, but it also, without risk, there is no reward. So I feel that the more I risk myself and put myself into things, the greater the backside reward is going to be.
Right. So how would you say your faith plays into that? Because, this is a really big thing to put yourself out there and to know that there is risk involved, and at the same time, you're trusting in not only your own abilities that God has given you, but you're also got to believe that there's some purpose behind that. So talk to me a little bit about that. Some of the ideas of how your faith you think plays into this.
Okay, I'll start, and then if you want. Faith actually has been huge over the last couple of years. Like Laura said, we haven't really. Right after we had kids, we had every excuse in the book to not come to church on Sunday, to not be involved with our church community. And we were just kind of spinning our wheels. And then once we started coming back regularly, my outlook on pretty much everything shifted focus. Instead of worrying about how much money can I make now to do all the things I want to do, whether that's going on vacation or buying a fancy car and keeping up with the Frisco lifestyle, it became more of, how can I make as much money as possible so I can decide how I can use my money to bless others or help others in need. And so faith has just really refocused my attention to what's meaningful in life, and looking forward, not just about the next coolest thing that I can have, but faith is it's very humbling when you look at the bigger picture. And I know I've made it this far on my own, not being employed by someone. No one can take my mind away. So if tickets for some reason don't work out, I have the faith that my mind and God will help me find something else to make, ends meet and provide for my family day in and day out.
I just know that we definitely had that struggle, though, where, at one point I'm like you're dabbling in all these things. Like, should I be worried? Like, we have, you're trying to get so much money all the time. I feel like that was such a big focus. And then, we kind of had to have a conversation about that and say, this is kind of affecting our life, and that you're not here. And, we have these 2 small children, and, we need to find balance in our life for, being able to work and earn the money that we need to, but also to be a family and to be able to enjoy those things, and not just kind of, me sitting around with the kids at home waiting for him to get home from, doing all that. And so I think I feel like we have that balance now, and it makes a big difference. And I think coming to Grace Avenue has really made a difference. And I feel like we, volunteer and are, part of the community more now than, we used to. And I'm so thankful for that.
So part of what's great in the midst of all that is that this idea of earning money is all built around the context of relationships, right? You've talked about your relationship with one another and your relationship with your kids, and now your relationship with folks at church, and so it all kind of fits within that. I know too, Chris, we talked a little bit about your main business is selling tickets, but you tend to kind of dabble around some other stuff on the side. I've known you to be a person of immense curiosity, and just when you kind of find something new to do. So talk about a few of the other things you do on the side.
Sure. So you say immense curiosity. A lot of other people just say I ask too many questions. My nickname's Mouth. So one of the other things I do during the holidays, I like to buy and sell toys. I'm not ripping anyone off or anything like that. I'm out there shopping the clearances or the sales at Walmart or Target, and when the holiday season picks up, I send them into Amazon in bulk and make some extra money that way. Just in the last year and a half or two, I've gotten into real estate, flipping some houses, looking at acquiring some rental properties, just anything that I can buy for cheaper than I can sell it for interests me, and whatever path that leads me down, I'm if it makes me money in the end, then I can use that money however I see fit instead of someone else getting to decide what they do with it.
You're never bored.
That is a factual statement.
That's awesome. So, one of the things Wesley talks about in terms of earning money and gaining what we can, he also makes this important clarification that we need to do that within a context of our relationship, and that there's certain things we can't afford to sacrifice in the midst of that. And I know you and I have talked a little bit about, that one of the things that's important too is that you can't sacrifice your health and you can't sacrifice your soul for the sake of just making money. You kind of had a sort of a enlightened moment about all that. You talk a little bit about that in terms of the last couple of years?
Yeah, so the last couple of years, I've been very grateful with my business. It's very successful, and part of being very successful is pouring a bunch of time into it, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and I could do tickets for 24 hours if I was single and didn't have any other responsibilities. But a couple of years ago, I'd say even over the last year and a half, I started working too much, and with that became bad eating habits, lack of exercise, and I started developing back pain. And you only have one body. You can work a million jobs, but if your body doesn't allow you to work, then that's a problem. So I'd say last fall and early spring, I rededicated and started, eating healthy, exercising, because, all these books that are written by well-known authors say health is one of the most important things to anyone's life. And whether you're the richest man in the world or a tiny little kid, if your body's not healthy, that's going to affect every single thing else you do. So, and like you said, you have to be... Having a healthy body has made me more mentally clear, so I'm able to refocus and decide which opportunities I go after rather than just going at it free will.
So what about the future? So you guys are in the midst of this. You got busy lives. You're providing for your family. You're watching your kids grow up. You're earning this money. What do you both want for the future?
I don't know. I'm very content with, how things are right now, as far as we've got balance in our life, and I feel like we're getting more involved here at the church, and that's kind of what I have always wanted. So,
yeah, what she said, I think finding a great church home with Grace Avenue and everything has made us change our outlook and what we do want to do in the future. When we first moved to Frisco, we had this great, huge house because we didn't have any kids, and then you have a couple kids, and you're like, this house is pretty small. My friends are moving up to Prosper and building new houses, and it's like, but then, listening to sermons every week and just participating in, Sunday school group, it really makes you take a step back and what's really important for us. And what's important for us is that we're healthy. We live in a great neighborhood. We're right across the street from the school that our kids are going to go to for elementary school. And so now instead of spending money now to have greater things, we don't need anything fancy. We just, if we're healthy and have great friends and relationships, that's in a great relationship with God. We're able to put all that extra money we're making and put it away, so we're not doing this until we're 70 or 80 years old like a lot of people are.
So I wonder, are there certain influences, authors that you've read or people that you've heard speak or things like that have really sort of given you some perspective on this whole idea of how you make a living and make a life? Are there any people like that? We'll assume that Jesus and Jesus's teachings are part of that, but beyond that, even just as you think about who are some of the people that have been very formative for you in that regard?
Well, honestly, in college and stuff, I never really thought too much about, acquiring a lot of money. I just wanted a job where I could feel happy. And then I feel like then I kind of got into like, oh, I do want this and I want that and I want this and that. And I got some credit card debt. And Chris went to financial peace planning and would come back with the ideas. And it wasn't really my favorite topic to ever discuss when he came home because I didn't want to talk about money and earning and all that. But I think that class really helped, even though I didn't actually attend. Like, I learned a lot of information from him and feel differently about, like, finances overall.
And that's Dave Ramsey.
Yes.
Financial Peace, which we teach on a regular basis here at the church. Yeah.
Yeah, I signed up for the Financial Peace University, not really knowing what it was, but just listening to Dave Ramsey talk, about, set money aside, how to allocate your funds. He said, you only earn so much money, and what you do, it's about saving money. It's not about what you spend, it's how much you save. And so, but one thing that really stuck with me in his class was the greatest source of building wealth is income. And, there's a lot of people around this part that, make 7 figures a year, but they also spend 7 figures a year. And with being responsible financially, it allows us to have one less thing that is the root of all, the biggest argument over people that get divorced is finances. So if we're able to keep the financial picture under wraps, then it allows us to give our time to focus on other meaningful things instead of something as petty as money in versus money out, which needs to happen. But if that's taking control of your life, which it started to for a while for us, then it needs to be readdressed and dealt with properly.
So when we're dealing with these subjects, we're always talking about making a living. And again, I think there's that balance of you're trying to make a living, but you also need to make a life. We've talked a little bit about that here in this session. Can you just sort of tell me a little bit more about how you think the best way to do that is? How do you balance making a living with making a life?
I think we definitely have to keep each other in check, and we have to have conversations with each other about things regularly, like about finances and things like that. Those are the things that, like, I definitely don't enjoy talking about, but I know, like, he loves it. But for me, that was a conversation that needed to be had. When I felt like Chris was working too much, that was a conversation that we needed to have. It wasn't a fun conversation, but it was something that needed to be had, and we had to, kind of keep each other in check to make sure that we have that balance in our life. And I'm sure we'll have to have, conversations, come Christmas time when it gets super busy for him, So it's just something that we have to kind of continue to keep the conversation open.
I'd say, like you said, making a living versus making a life obviously go hand in hand, because if we didn't have kids, I personally like to travel. So that's like one thing I don't have a problem spending my hard-earned money on is fun trips and stuff, because it's making memories and making a life versus just making a living. But with the kids, we have to keep all that in check, and it's nice because when we're able to talk about finances and earnings, like she said, they're discussions, they're not arguments. And that just, if I'm yelling at someone, the first person's natural response is defensive, versus if we're having an open discussion, we're able to address the situation a lot more effectively and reallocate funds as necessary. But the making a life part is, it's fun teaching. Like I'm numbers all the time, so anytime we're at the store, I'm working with Lucas and Elena trying to calculate a percentage off, or if this is 10% off, then just
and they're 3 and 5, so they don't get any of that.
Well, no one ever said I was too young when you started teaching me about finances.
Right, and in some respects, that's part of the story. There are so many folks whose families never talked about finances. Everything from earning to saving, to giving, and because they never talked about those things, we end up with a lot of adults who, quite honestly, are just in the dark about all that. So yeah, it's probably never too young to have those conversations, because it drives how we go about living our lives and what we think is important and how we put those things in place. So we're talking during these 4 weeks about simple generosity. And I've known you guys to become very generous people, and I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about your own journey to generosity in the midst of that. How did you come to a place where you realized that making this money was important, but also then being generous with it was important as well?
Right. Well, if you make a bunch of money and don't have any meaningful things to do with it, what's the point of making it, right? So once Laura and I became, a little more financially, I wouldn't say secure, but stable, and we kind of knew what was coming in and out every week. It helped us put into place a little budget. That, like I said before, that Financial Peace University class that Grace Avenue offers is excellent, and it really makes you put forward what's important most. You get X amount of dollars every paycheck. Where do I want the money to go first? And then, because I believe in our community, in our Frisco lifestyle, we're all about being seen and being social. And if you spend all your money doing that, then there isn't much to give at the end of the month or on Sundays or whenever. So we really took the approach: how much can we afford to give, and not let it be dictated by our social activities or responsibilities, but how much can we give to the church, and then whatever's left we're able to do fun stuff with or whatever. We just have to. It took a lot of. We did a lot of praying about it, and how much can we afford to give, and still being able to provide for our family and ourselves. But once we're able to give to the church and see where that goes, it's not hard to make a set commitment every week or once a month. We get more out of it by giving, because we love to be able to see the money being put to good use, rather than just on one-off activities in Frisco or buying an overpriced meal at a restaurant, when we can have more fellowship at home and invite people over to our house to have company that way.
Laura, you want to add something to it?
Yeah,
Generosity is a practice of faith.
I know for me, like growing up, my mom tithed every single week, and so I knew that was important and that was something that needed to be done. And so when we would come to church, we would give money, but then if I forgot my checkbook, or no one had cash in their purse, then or you don't have a purse, but if I didn't have any cash in my purse, then we wouldn't give anything that week. And so, and then especially with the kids going to Sunday school and absolutely loving it and loving Mr. Michael especially, then it just felt like, okay, well, I don't want to forget to tithe, and I don't want to, only be able to give this much amount of money because I don't have enough in my purse. And that's when I was like, we need to get online, and we need to make sure that this is something that happens weekly, and we don't really have to think too much about it. But we did talk about it and decide what was best for our family to give. But it's nice that we can do that online and not have to worry about doing it.
Yeah, the option to set up online, that's how we do it, just because it's easier. I don't have to remember to bring a check or bring cash. Like she said, when we first started coming, it was, oh, what do I have in my pocket? All right, here's 20, whatever. We can go online. It comes out once a week. It's kind of one of those set it and forget it, and know that the same amount that you've pledged to donate is in fact coming out and being put to good use, and it helps the church with their budgeting and decide what other ministries and local assistance we can plan for in the future.
Let me ask you one question as we finish. So you've talked several times about how important the church is, and I just wonder if the two of you might just sort of elaborate on what do you dream for our church? What's one big dream you have for a place like Grace Avenue? Because you've now become very invested in your time and in your giving and everything else. What's your dream for Grace Avenue?
Wow, that's a big question. I don't know. What drew me to Grace Avenue is the fact that this is a church that does. That they don't just talk about or put money out there for someone else to fix the problem or help the problem. Like Grace Avenue is a doing church, and so that's what I love about this church, and I hope to see more of, I guess, of this church.
I just like what she said. I like to see the outreach that this church provides to the local community, because growing up, I went to a church that, was all about, collecting on Sunday, but we never got to really see where the funds went. And here, you're here for 5 minutes, and just the pictures on the wall, you see how all this money is being used for the greater good in our community. And I just hope to see our church grow with for a while there, it seemed like the church was a lot of older couples, but now we're starting to get in a lot of younger families. And it's nice seeing all age ranges and diversities come to our church. And I just hope that it becomes a more truer representation of Frisco and our surrounding community, that we're able to give back and have the members contribute.
Guys, it's been great to have a conversation. I appreciate so much you're spending the time with us and opening up about your lives together. And if you are out after Christmas at some of these places, you may see Chris Hines trying to gobble up stuff to put back into his business. So thank y'all so much for your time, and thanks so much for your faithfulness here at Grace Avenue.
Thank you.
Thanks, Billy.
So as we talk about making life and making a living, the whole series that we're doing right now is based around fulfillment. That's the title. And so I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about fulfillment and how you sort of see that in terms of how you live your life and make a living.
Well, it's funny that I had to watch church on live stream last Sunday, so I got to see your sermon from home because one of our kids wasn't feeling well, but Laura was here at the choir. But your quote, "Fulfillment comes through wisdom, not through acquisition," and you talking about this Amazon warehouse, and I'm just sitting in the couch kind of laughing because that's where all the toys that I send in go to that exact warehouse. So your curiosity with mine of maybe we can set up a Grace Avenue tour of the Amazon Fulfillment Center one day and go check it out.
It'd be great. Absolutely. Hey, you know what? The fact that you have already memorized the quote makes me happy.
Yes.
Great job.
Thanks.